What's up, y'all? Welcome to Dolphins Daily, your daily dose of Dolphins content. You got me, Chris Kane, and we got Dolphin Talk. So we're gonna start with the rookie class. We talk about the draft all the time on this channel, podcast, whatever, because rookies are where you get a chance to build your team. Right? Everyone's happy about the draft. The reason ESPN puts it on 3 different days now is because they know people are hyped for the draft because it's like one draft pick can change your whole future. I mean, look at the Commanders. Terrible the last couple of years. Terrible. You draft Jaden Daniels, all of a sudden, hey, look at us. NFC Championship game, right? Everyone feels like you're 1 or 2 draft picks away from really propelling yourself into the upper echelon. Or, the sleeper, the 5th, 6th, 7th round person that all of a sudden is like, yo, where did this person come from? It's like Duquesne State. Like, I didn't know I was even a real college. And now they're like your starting linebacker, right? So after the season, though, you get to evaluate what your team did. Like, how was the draft? And if you have a draft the way, let's say, Washington had, where they basically are like, hey, we get drafted a receiver. He's like our 4th receiver. We drafted a quarterback, drafted this O lineman, that D tackle, and all 4 played a lot and played well. We feel like we did a good draft. This is what Philadelphia has been the best at doing this because they literally drafted DeJean and Quinion Mitchell, and then they just threw them in the secondary, and they have like the best secondary in the league. That's like we nailed the draft. So the Dolphins did not nail the draft this past year. We've ranked 27th in the league in the draft based on like productivity, and that's no bueno. I mean, obviously the best draft pick was Chop Robinson, and again, the first half of the season, Chop was on the field, but he didn't start. So he was the third in, sometimes the fourth, coming in on rush downs only, and he just wasn't producing, but he was on the field, and we could see he's near sacks, right? But he wasn't making plays. And we had Storm Duck as one of our like nickel corners, and he would come in and okay, because Kendall was hurt a lot this year, so he played, but he wasn't like standing out. And we drafted Jalen Wright, and he was like the 5th running back at various points, sometimes healthy scratch. It just wasn't a super productive year. Now, some of the draft picks were made for like long-term future. Like Patrick Paul was made to be like our future left tackle, so he didn't play a lot this year because our left tackle was healthy this year. That makes sense. So maybe a year or 2 from now, when he's in his 3rd year, he maybe gets an NFL body. He could just step right into play, and it's like, oh, cool. That was a couple years ago. Our draft pick worked out, but this year, nothing. Didn't do anything. Jalen Wright had a couple moments. It was like, okay, cool. Like I think he had like a reverse run. It wasn't in San Francisco, but he had a run. He just came one way, came back. You're like, hold up, that's got a little A-Chan in there. Got a little like we got a little excited, but then bunch of games of 15 yards, 20 yards, just not super productive. But I don't think we're bringing Jeff Wilson back. I can easily see Mostert being off the team. And if Jalen Wright becomes the number 2 running back, then I expect a big pop in productivity. So wasn't a really productive year. And sometimes you just miss on picks. Like you see a guy on film, like, oh, this guy's going to work out, and then he just doesn't pan out. Like everyone we drafted made the team, which is good because you don't want to ever draft someone that they just get cut. That just feels like, what was that? Everyone made the team, but they were just kind of chilling as backups. And you would like your rookies to make a bigger impact. That's the goal. That's why you draft. And we really need our rookies this year to make an impact because we have a couple picks in the top 4 rounds, and we need those to hit because we have a lot of positions of need. So not great this year for the draft, but we will see how we'll see how this draft goes because there's a lot. I think there are a lot of good players in positions we need in this draft, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But we'll see. This past year, not so good. Now, I was watching the Julian Edelman podcast. He's talking to Bill Burr. I don't normally watch the podcast because I don't care about the Patriots, but I'm a big Bill Burr fan, and he's a Patriots fan. So they were talking about like coming to Miami. And he would always talk about how hard it is to play in Miami. And Bill was he's a comedian. He's making jokes about, oh, you guys are out in South Beach throwing money, strip clubs. He's doing all that kind of stuff. But Julian was talking about just the elemental change. Now, you go to Miami in September, October, dude, it's 85 with humidity, and you're playing at like 1 in the afternoon. Like the sun is right on top of you, and the way the stadium's positioned, the sun comes up and it hurts the opponent's side more. So, and Bill's like, nah, you guys are partying. But he's like, dude, like, you're not ready for that kind of humidity and heat. Which is why when teams come to Miami to play, they typically don't play well. Right? It's a very common thing to come to Miami You can see teams a little swampish. Like the one time the Dolphins beat Buffalo in the last 5 years was when they came to Miami, and Josh was fumbling snaps. People weren't moving fast enough. You could see people's energy fading as the game went along. Like Miami played a very composed game that time. Tua made a big throw to Waddle in that game, but it really was Buffalo not executing super sharp, and you can very much say people were just a little sluggish and weren't moving as well, and it's because of the home field. But the question came in: is it really an advantage when it comes to elite teams? Because we usually play teams at home earlier in the year when it's hot in Miami. But when we have to go on the road late, we've talked about the Dolphins' struggles in cold temperatures, right? Tua 0-7 under 30 degrees. The team is not good. You know, Chris Broussard said we're break dancers. We only play in the heat and that kind of thing. But I think the four best teams are clearly Kansas City, Buffalo, Baltimore, and Philly. You can throw, people will try to throw a Cincinnati in there. They didn't make the playoffs. I'm not dealing with that. The Commanders made it to NFC Championship game, fine. But it's also cold in D.C., so that would count. Detroit plays in the Dome, but Detroit still gets cold, just not necessarily in the stadium itself. And so all the elite teams basically play in very cold temperatures. Basically. Like, I mean, you can, even it gets cold in Houston. Like, there's not, no one plays, it's us in Tampa. We're not going to mention the Jaguars here. There's no reason to mention Jaguars and winning football. Why would you do such a thing? No one believes that team is winning. We could just keep it to Tampa and Miami. Jacksonville, no shade. I'm all about Duval. Duval? Nah. We're going to talk about the Jaguars. But outside of those two teams, the teams that you're going to play that really matter are all cold. Pittsburgh's cold. Cincy's cold. Like, if Cleveland ever gets together, that's cold. And Miami's always more or less in the heat. And we've seen when we go to play cold weather teams, it doesn't typically work out. And I don't know what you do about that because we have an outdoor stadium, but it doesn't get cold in Miami. So, like, what do you do when you have to beat a cold weather team at some point on the road to win? Because it seems like the only path Miami has to really getting a Super Bowl run, and that's like the really realistic path, is if they have the number one seed and everybody's got to go through Miami. That's the only way that makes any logical sense. The idea that, oh, you're the 4 or 5 seed, but you got to play Buffalo in the first round, and then you got to play Baltimore in the second round, and then the Chiefs in the conference championship all through on the road. Or I guess the first one will be home, but the last two will be on the road if you're the 4 seed. Like, does anyone believe that we're going to travel to Buffalo in mid-January and get a dub? We're going to go to Kansas City in January. We're going to go to, that doesn't even make sense, as a fan of the team. That doesn't seem like what we're going to do. Now, the idea that they got to come down to Miami, you might still pick the other team, but for sure, you give the Dolphins a better chance to win. No chance. I mean, there's no question about that. So that seems to be the only path. Either win out and be the 1 seed, or at some point you're going to go on the road and play a team that's built for the cold, and we're not. And I don't know if that means team needs to do more cold weather practices. I've always been an advocate, if you're like a warm weather team or a team like Denver that plays in high altitudes, a team like that you need to go to the city you're going to play in as early as possible and just try to acclimate to the weather. I know it won't make the biggest difference in the world, but when teams play in London, a lot of times they'll go early or right before the game. There's no in between. It's either we're going to go Monday and then be there all week for Sunday, or we're landing Friday evening, Saturday morning, because you're trying to keep it either normal or let me acclimate to the terrain and the time difference. I don't know what McDaniel's thing is. I think we tried a couple different methods of how to deal with the cold, but it has not really worked so far. And I do think just being in Miami, there is a detriment to being on the road. So hopefully this upcoming year, we can try to rectify that, but I don't know. It's been tough. And finally, we're talking about the draft again. And up until now, every draft board has been cornerback, O-lineman for Dolphins in the first round. It's been very consistent. It's very much a position of need. But there's a new mock draft that came out today that had the Dolphins getting Jalen Walker, who was the Georgia linebacker, in the first round. And there's some scouts who love him, and there's some that don't like him. And the ones who don't like him think he doesn't have a true position. They call those people tweeners in the league. But a tweener and a hybrid is like marketing. It's like, I'm a hybrid means I can do a lot of everything, but tweener means you don't have a defined thing to do. Right? So let's say someone like Micah Parsons is technically a linebacker, but he also is a pass rusher, And him in coverage is not great, but him rushing the passer is very good. And so, but sometimes he has to be in coverage, but he's not good in coverage. So it's like, yeah, he doesn't do both things well. He does one thing exceptionally well, but we don't make him full-time DM because that changes our defensive scheme. It's a thing. I remember when Derwin James came out of college. Derwin James played at Florida State, for those who don't know. He plays for the Chargers now. I think Derwin James is the best strong safety in the whole league. I don't think he's always put in that position by some people. They'll put other people they like in. I think he's the best strong safety in the league. I think he's good in coverage. He's good in the box. He's instinctive. He's a playmaker. Big Derwin James fan. But a lot of people thought kind of the same thing at Florida State. Okay, he's big at his position. He's good near the box. He's a really good pass rusher, and he's solid in coverage. So is he strong safety? Can he bulk up and be an outside linebacker? Like, where is he going to be? And he's been deployed to just kind of go kill, go do what you do. He just kind of flies around. He's always making plays, and sometimes he plays on the edge and that kind of thing. But I think if you do that, I think the goal going forward is to get people who are more hybrid based. We mentioned the old lineman from the Dolphins, from the Hurricanes, who can be a guard and a tackle. I think if you have an outside linebacker that can rush but can also cover, if you have a safety that can come down and blitz and go back, I think having guys that can do multiple things makes you a more well-rounded team, because you don't want to be like, oh, I'm just a cover corner, but when defenses run at me, I can't help run support at all, because now we're just going to run at the cover corner. But if you're a corner that, hey, I'm good in pass coverage, but if you come my way, this is why Jalen Ramsey has been so great, because he's not just a cover corner. He will get physical. He can get off blocks. This is what makes you elite. The cover guys like the Sauce Gardner. Like, Sauce Walker's crazy. That's not a real person. Sauce Gardner, tremendous cover corner, but he's not here to do any run support. So when you play the Jets, if you get to the edge on Sauce, you put a receiver blocking him, he's not getting off the block. You just got a free run. And I think as good as you are at one thing, you need to be more varied in what you can do. So I wouldn't mind Jalen Walker if we have a plan for maybe second round, fourth round offensive linemen. I don't mind the plan at all, because you need to be able to rush other passers, and you need to have more varied tools on defense, because if you can blitz from corner, from linebacker, from safety, and that can change how you scheme it, then that's how you beat the top teams. You don't beat the teams by just playing traditional defense anymore. So we'll see. But as always, that would do it for the show. Thank you guys for tuning in to Dolphins Daily. We're giving you daily Dolphins, daily doses. We appreciate all the support. Like, follow, subscribe, tell your friends. We'll see you next time. Peace.